following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everybody, welcome to Eye on Oshkosh. Cheryl Hentz here, and tonight we're going to be talking about the Better Business Bureau. We're also going to, if there's time, talk about some consumer tips for you as we go into summer. It seems like scams kind of run in seasonal patterns, if you will. So if we've got some time, we're going to talk about some of those tonight. But we're really happy to welcome back to the show Susan Bach. She is the Regional Director for the Northeast Wisconsin Division of the Wisconsin Better Business Bureau, and she's been here before, and we're happy that you're back again.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
And you have been here longer than what I thought. Or I should say it's been longer since you were here the last time.
About a year ago.
Yeah, and see, I try to have you guys on twice a year, so I must have slipped and dropped the ball somewhere. We'll try and make sure that doesn't happen. We'll have you on closer to the holidays. So tonight we thought we would talk a little bit about, what the Better Business Bureau is, because I think everybody has some general idea of what it is, but they're not really sure. So, like for example, someone that I know said, well, in order to get a good rating with the Better Business Bureau, you have to pay a fee. And I know that that's not true.
That's not true.
So we want to dispel some of those myths. We want to start at the beginning. And what is the Better Business Bureau? How did it get started, and what is its main purpose?
Well, I'm glad you asked. We're a private nonprofit organization. A lot of people think because we have the name Bureau in our name that maybe we're a government agency or a law enforcement agency. We're not. Private nonprofit, so no taxpayer dollars are used to support us. We actually started back in 1912, and that was back in the day, long before you and I were here. But back in the day, there were a lot of snake oil salesmen, and 1912 actually was around the time that Charles Ponzi, the original Ponzi schemer, was around. So a lot of snake oil salesmen, there wasn't a lot of government regulation, and you could take a product and say it cured anything from insomnia to weight gain, any kind of thing. And nobody really oversaw that. So there was a lawsuit, and in the lawsuit there was a witness on the witness stand, and they were talking about something, and he said, oh, that's just advertising. Nobody believes that anyway. Well, sitting in the audience was the president of the National Advertising Council, and he thought, boy, this is a problem. If nobody believes any kind of advertising, then my industry is in trouble.
Yeah.
So he thought there ought to be a way that we can weed out these bad apples, because these bad apples are making the rest of us look bad. There ought to be a way that consumers can tell the good companies from the bad companies. We ought to create some kind of standards that we can rate these companies by. And it was sort of the beginning of self-regulation. So that was basically the genesis of the Better Business Bureau. It started out as an arm of the National Advertising Council, and it has grown through the years to be included like in the Chambers of Commerce, and now we're a separate entity. We have been for a very long time. We've been around in Wisconsin since 1939.
Okay.
So the Wisconsin Better Business Bureau, which is headquartered in Milwaukee, with branch offices in Appleton and Madison. We're one of 122 Better Business Bureau branches throughout North America. So we service every state in the United States, every province in Canada. We're even moving into Mexico. So basically our goal, our mission has always been to connect consumers with local trustworthy businesses and to kind of create a marketplace where buyers and sellers can trust each other. So we are supported by companies who go through our accreditation program. It has nothing to do with the rating that we give them. Our accreditation program is a set of standards, and if a company meets those standards, promises to maintain those standards, agrees to be evaluated and monitored, like their licensing, their criminal history, excuse me, then they can be a part of our accreditation program, and that's really how we're funded. We don't charge any fees to the consumer to use our services. That's all supported by ethical companies in Wisconsin who want to create a better marketplace.
Sure. And the website address, which we'll be putting up throughout the show, is bbb.org. So, and it's nice because these days you don't even have to type in www anymore. And that was always, kind of a pain to have to say that before everything.
I remember when you had to type in HTTP
and
colon
then,
slash.
And then, yeah. You don't have to do any of that anymore.
Come a long way.
So just bbb.org, and that'll take you right to it. You were talking about in Canada and now starting to get into Mexico. That makes me think about, we're such a global marketplace that
Absolutely.
One of the problems with dealing with companies in other countries is because they don't always have the same kinds of consumer standards and ethical standards, and if you get taken, it's not always the easiest to get your money back. Products they're not held to the highest, like Underwriters Laboratory standards and that whole kind of thing.
Right.
When you have the Better Business Bureau going into Mexico, can a consumer be assured then that they have to meet the same kinds of standards that we expect here in the United States?
Well, the standards for the Better Business Bureau's rating and accreditation program will all be the same. So
Okay.
for any company who's accredited here in Wisconsin, they have to meet the same standards as any kind of, accredited business in California or Canada or Mexico. So, but you're right. It's hard. Back in the day, it used to be you just walk down the street to your local hardware store. But now with online shopping and stuff, it's really hard to see, I want to know a little bit more about the reputation of this online company. How do you do that? Well, we are just a free resource for people to be able to do that.
Well, and I'm sure that we're going to talk about this at some point later, but since you are talking about the fact that you're a free resource for that, you're also a free resource for finding out what charities are legitimate and what charities aren't.
Yes.
And I know we're going to be talking later for sure about some scam charities, or charity scams, whichever way you want to look at it.
Right.
And so you are a resource for that as well.
Well, I mean, we rate businesses, but a lot of people don't know that we have the Wise Giving Alliance, which is, an arm for us to review charities. Of course, against different standards than we review businesses, but we have 20 standards of charitable accountability that we review charities against. So it's a great resource for people, if they get some kind of donation request, that they can just go to the BBB's website, or they can go to give.org, which is affiliated with the Better Business Bureau, to see, how responsible is that charity with the money that they receive and things like that.
Okay, so let's walk the viewers through a typical kind of case. Let's say let's say I'm new to the area, and I find a neighborhood mechanic, and I want to see if they've got a good reputation or not.
Yeah.
So let's call them XYZ Auto Repair.
Okay.
So what do? I go to bbb.org, and then from there, what do I do?
We try and make it as simple and easy as possible. All you really need to do to check out a business review for a company is to go to our website or give us a call. But on our website, at the top, there's a big search bar. You just type in the name of the company. So in this case, XYZ Auto Repair Services in Oshkosh or wherever. Hit search. You should be able to find that company name on a list in the search results. Click on that, and it'll open up a business review that we have for the company. What are you going to find on that business review? Lots of things. How long they've been in business, where they're located, the types of services and products that they provide, how many complaints they've had, how they've resolved those complaints. You'll be able to find customer reviews. So people, who may not necessarily have a complaint issue, but they just want to tell about their experience with that company, good
Sure.
or bad. They can read customer reviews that have been verified as real people by the Better Business Bureau. You can see if they're properly licensed, how long they've been in business, the owner's name, if there have been any kind of government actions against that company. So all free information that you can use, to exercise your own best judgment of whether or not you want to use this company.
Sure. And that is kind of like a one-stop shop, really.
Yeah.
Because if you're wanting to see, for example, if there have been any lawsuits against them,
Mm-hmm.
well, then you have to go to CCAP. But then to see anything else, you may have to do another internet search
Right.
and see if anybody's rated them in one of these places like Yelp or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But here, it's a one-stop shop, like I said, and
Yes.
everything is right there. And it's all been verified information. So it's not just somebody who's gotten upset and, or just didn't like the food at a restaurant and just wrote some kind of nasty review.
Or a competitor,
That's
a
true, that happens.
competitor or-
Does that happen a lot?
Yeah, it does.
It does? Okay.
Yes, and in a case like that, we would send the review to the business and ask them to comment on it. They have the option of saying, this is not a customer of mine, in which case we'll go back to the writer of the review and say, please provide some kind of proof that you are indeed an actual customer of this company. And if they can, then we're going to go ahead and publish it. So.
Okay. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work that you guys are doing.
Yeah.
For just one type of review or complaint, if you will. I mean, how large of a staff do you guys have to do all this?
Well, in the Appleton office, there's 3 of us, myself and 2 other people. But down in our main headquarters in Milwaukee, where our quality assurance team works and our operations staff, there's about 30 of us. So,
Well, that's not bad. That's a pretty decent
yeah, pretty
sized staff,
sizable
I guess.
staff. Absolutely.
And,
We get
and
the
none
job
of you,
done.
none of you looks like you're being worked to the bone. So, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else is on my list here? Okay, can I find a list of good businesses?
Yes. You can go to the Better Business Bureau's website, or you can give us a call as well. It's 920-734-4352. And so if you're searching online, you can go to our accredited business directory. And you can search for any kind of category that you want. Roofers, plumbers, auto mechanics, cell phone providers. We can pull up a list of people who are accredited by the Better Business Bureau. So what that means is that if they've joined our accreditation program, they have agreed to be evaluated and monitored. They've given us enough information that we're able to check background checks on the principals, licensing requirements, bankruptcy, sex offender. So if you're inviting this person into your home to do some kind of remodel or repair, you know that somebody has checked their criminal history, their complaint history with the Better Business Bureau has to be good, and they have to be responsive to complaints. But also, an accredited business means that if there is a problem later, that accredited business is contractually obligated to resolve that complaint, or they can't be in our accreditation program anymore. So
Okay, well, that's-
that is sort of
that's
an
good.
added assurance that you're going to have, a favorable experience with that
Sure.
company.
Well, that's a very good accountability measure, So, you were talking about competitors a little bit ago. let's talk about your own competitors, like Angie's List, and there are a couple others that I've seen crop up, but certainly, is one called Home Advisor or something like that? But I think that one and Angie's List are probably two of the bigger ones. How, and now Angie's List I see is branching out into everything. It used to be, I think, primarily like contractors and home repair type stuff, but now they're getting into everything, including piano tuners I saw on an ad. So how, I think that you guys do a more in-depth kind of thing, but why don't you tell us, how do you differ from them?
You know, I can't speak for Angie's List, but I do know some things that people tell me about the differences. I mean, we both provide business reviews for companies, and that's pretty much where the similarities end. We're a nonprofit organization. She's a for-profit company. We don't charge the consumer for any of our services. I think you have to have a monthly subscription, something
I'm not
like
sure.
that.
I think so.
Yeah. We've been around for 103 years. I'm not sure exactly when Angie started.
She doesn't look that old. so I think you've been around longer. Maybe not you, but the Better Business Bureau.
Yes, and I think we're more of a kind of a boots on the ground kind of company where our main goal is to try and connect consumers to trustworthy businesses. And if there is a problem, we're here locally to help you resolve that complaint. I'm not sure what would happen if you, tried to work through Angie's List to get a complaint resolved. But, I mean, it is what it is. And
Well, but I think too, and maybe it is that you guys have been around longer, and I mean, she's got a pretty well-known name, but I think the Better Business Bureau name is probably more recognizable, even though before this show, maybe people didn't completely understand what you guys do, which is why we're doing this. But, I mean, certainly, I think that people probably fear the Better Business Bureau a little bit more, even though you don't have any teeth when it comes to lawmaking power or legislative type powers. You always say, oh, I hear people say, well, I'm going to report you to the Better Business Bureau. Not me, but I'm going to report them to the Better Business Bureau. I don't hear people saying I'm going to report them to Angie's List, So I think I'm not saying that there's no credibility with Angie's List. I'm just saying I think you guys, because you've been around longer and it's a more recognizable name, I would certainly be inclined to use BBB,
well, thank you.
Faster than I would Angie's List. And plus, I don't want to pay to get information or to give information. And I've not been there. I don't know. But I do think you're right. I think you have to pay something probably to get the information. I'm not sure. So how, if someone has a complaint, let's use XYZ Auto Repair.
Sure.
So I've gone in there, I don't know, I had an engine replaced, let's say that. Pretty pricey thing that I had done there. So and I'm just not happy with it. It makes a clicking noise when I'm driving down the street. I'm just not happy with the engine.
Yeah. Well, when you give us a call at the Better Business Bureau, the first thing we're going to ask is, have you tried to work with a company to correct the problem? And if you say, yes, we have, but they're not being very responsive, then we'll say, you might be interested in filing a complaint with the Better Business Bureau. Because we always ask that question first because we never want the business to be blindsided. Like, I had no idea there was a problem. I wish they would have come to me first.
Yeah.
So we want to give them a chance to correct the problem on their own. But if that's not working, then you can definitely file a complaint with the Better Business Bureau. And here's how the process works. We have to take your complaint, the details of what happened to you in writing, and then we will forward that to the company. And we will ask for them to respond. And I think we'll give them about 10 days to respond. And then their response has to be in writing as well. We will forward their response back to you, the consumer. And basically the Better Business Bureau is going to act as an intermediary between the two parties until they can come to a resolution. If they cannot come to a resolution, then the Better Business Bureau will make a determination, that the business offered a fair result, but the consumer remains unsatisfied. Or the consumer, we're siding with the consumer, so we're going to close the complaint as unresolved for that company. And that will have a negative impact on the rating that we give that company. So although we don't have any teeth, a lot of consumers want to come to us and say, shut that company down, or go and march in there and get my money back. We can't do that, but companies are very motivated to work with us because they know that if they don't, consumers are going to see that. That's going to be reflected in the rating that we give them. They'll be able to read the complaints that the company has received. But beyond that, if we see criminal activity or something, it's not that we do nothing. We do have an investigator, and she works quite regularly with local law enforcement, our state's Department of Justice, our state's Department of Consumer Protection. So, we do have some teeth. We refer cases and share complaint data all the time with the Federal Trade Commission and local law enforcement as well.
Sure, excellent. And if somebody does want to take it to a place that has some kind of legislative teeth, or can maybe put a little bit more fire under someone's feet, there always is the Federal Trade Commission if it's a national type company, or if it's a statewide thing, the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection.
It's a mouthful. I know.
It is. It
Yes.
is. And they really do, they oversee a lot. The problem that I have seen there is that with some of the budget cuts that have happened over the years, they're not as responsive as I think they used to be. And I've seen that myself, and I've heard that from others. So again, if you feel that you need to go that route, by all means do. But it may take you a little bit to get it resolved. By the way, that brings up a question for me, Susan. Can someone file a complaint with you at the Better Business Bureau and with the state?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You can have open complaints with the BBB as well as the State Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. Fantastic. It depends on, too, the kind of result that you're expecting. Sometimes you want that company to be shut down or whatever, and definitely if you think that there's been some criminal action, you should file it with the state. Sometimes you just want other people to know about your experience, or we can definitely work with you to get a refund back or a replacement product for something that's wrong. But we do have different areas of expertise. So
Sure.
So absolutely, you can file 2 complaints simultaneously.
Okay. But I do know with the state, at least for the state of Wisconsin, now we're on YouTube, so I want to reference or kind of disclose here that when I refer to state, I'm talking about the state of Wisconsin. I do know that if you have filed a court action, like a small claims action against someone, they won't take your complaint.
The state of Wisconsin?
Yes.
Yeah, neither will the Better Business Bureau.
You won't?
We
Okay.
will not accept a complaint that's gone through the court system or is currently pending through the court system.
Okay.
Just because, whatever they decide is going to supersede anything that we
Sure.
should ever decide. So, yeah.
Okay. Are there any other kinds of complaints that you guys don't take?
Yes. I have a list.
Oh my, okay, I better get my pen ready.
So we do not handle complaints or disputes between employees and employers, like
Okay.
wage disputes or wrongful termination, things like that. We would refer the person to the Department of Workforce Development. We don't handle discrimination or harassment complaints, any kind of complaints alleging criminal acts, because we would just refer that to the local law enforcement agency. Claims that are already tried in court, of course, are already in litigation. Civil rights claims, claims regarding the care provided by a medical professional, so the quality of care. We would probably refer that person then to the medical licensing board that oversees that person's license.
Okay.
However, if your complaint against your doctor or your vet or something like that, or your dentist, is a billing issue or a customer service issue, that's a complaint that we would take, but not about the competency of the medical
Okay.
professional.
All right.
Complaints against companies that are out of business we can accept, or collection of a debt. Things that are based, complaint issues based solely on the dissatisfaction of price or a buyer's remorse is something that we won't take.
Okay.
Complaints against an individual, so you can't file a complaint against your neighbor or your brother-in-law or anything like that. Any complaint that's asking for punitive damages or compensation damages in excess of the amount paid, any kind of third-party complaints. And when you're not seeking a resolution, we won't accept that.
Okay.
You have to actually ask for something. And we won't accept anonymous complaints.
Okay.
So
All right.
it's quite a handful.
It is, and I've managed to keep up with you. The second to the last one before anonymous, that is one that I didn't get, but I also didn't understand it.
Right. So we won't accept a complaint unless you're asking for a specific resolution.
Okay.
So if you're asking for an apology, or that you just want to tell everybody that you had a terrible meal at that restaurant or something. You have to ask for, we're trying to work out a resolution. So you have to ask for something. I mean, that's, if you just want to tell about your experience, then there are other avenues for you. You could file a customer review against that company. But to make it worth everybody's while, you have to want something in return.
Okay. And it has to be reasonable, I'm assuming. Like if I have a problem with XYZ auto repair because I don't like the engine, or I think that there's a problem with the engine that they put in, I can't say, Susan, I want a new car.
Right. No,
It's got to be reasonable.
It's got to be reasonable, or you can't say, I want another $1,000 for my time for running around, or, they should never have done this to me, and I want to make sure it never happens. Give me $1,000 in punitive damages. Sorry.
That's something for the courts?
Yep. We would probably refer you then to small claims court.
Okay. When you said you won't accept anonymous complaints, I get that. But one thing that I hear from a lot of people is, they feel like they've somehow been wronged by a company, or there's an issue of some kind, a service issue, or a product just not up to the quality that they thought it was going to be. But, there are a lot of people out there, and some of them are my best and dearest friends, and I love them dearly. But some people just aren't comfortable with, calling up, and they don't deal with confrontation very well. And that's not, I think you can tell, that's not an issue that I have. I don't seek out confrontation, but I'm not going to run from it either. But a lot of people I know, friends and people who are not friends, they just don't like confrontation of any kind. And so they're more comfortable with just sort of sucking it up and not doing anything about it.
Yeah.
And, do you want people to try and resolve something before they come to you? Or if they are a person, for example, who they know that they have to put their name on something, but it's easier for them to sign a written complaint than it is for them to go into the store or the shop or whatever the case may be and actually face them,
Yeah.
So would you handle something like that?
Well, yes, of course.
Okay.
I mean, we're here as a resource and as a neutral third party to mediate any kind of dispute. We just don't want businesses to be completely blindsided, that they were never aware that there was a problem in the first place. But we don't take anonymous complaints because there's a lot of legwork that will go behind that.
Absolutely.
That company will have to do their research, find the customer record, see what happened, and if they don't have the customer's name, it's going to be very difficult for them to resolve,
Right.
impossible to resolve the issue.
Well,
So,
and there's a certain amount of legitimacy
right.
to it as well.
Yeah.
How is it legitimate if they're not going to, I mean, not that it's not legitimate, but it just shows that there is a certain amount of legitimacy anyway, if they're
Yes.
willing to put their name on something.
Yeah.
So even though someone is not comfortable, say I'm not comfortable, I don't know, I had a bad meal or whatever the case may be, and but I'm just not comfortable approaching them. Is that, so you would handle that, but then is the business still kind of not being blindsided because I haven't gone to them myself and tried to work it out?
Well, I guess, if it came to us that way, we would say, have you called the manager and just explained, that I got a bad meal or whatever the case may be? Are they aware that there's a problem? So we just encourage you to do that. Is it an absolute requirement? No. I mean,
Okay.
we would definitely try and help you with that complaint.
I think people just in general just need to become stronger. They have to be an advocate for themselves.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, the Better Business Bureau can work its tail off for someone, but at the end of the day, you have to advocate for yourself. And if you, I mean, who better to stand up for yourself than yourself? I mean, not to say you guys don't do a great job, but I would rather try and handle something myself first.
Right.
But I know that I'm a unique character that way.
Yeah.
I mean, most people just, I don't want to call them. No, don't make me do that.
Yeah, and kind of in that vein, I mean, you probably heard that we don't take complaints that are based on buyer's remorse
Yes.
or on price only, because, I mean, let's face it, the customer bears some responsibility in a transaction, and unless they forced you or coerced you or tricked you into signing on the dotted line, you have some responsibility in that transaction. So what happens a lot is that a person will buy, say, a used car or something, and they'll negotiate, and it'll go back and forth with the dealership, and they'll sign on the dotted line and they'll drive it home, and the brother-in-law will say, "What'd you pay for that car?"
Yeah.
Oh boy, my friend got the same car for a lot less. So then they want to turn around and file a complaint with the Better Business Bureau that they overpaid for the car. Well, now that is based on price or buyer's remorse, and that's really not a complaint that we'll accept, because that person signed on the dotted line. They signed a contract, and really there's nothing that the Better Business Bureau or even a good lawyer is going to be able to do to get you out of that contract. Now, if they lied to you or coerced you, or they wouldn't let me leave until I signed the contract, that's different. Then that is a complaint that we would accept. But I mean, the consumer has some responsibility.
Of course. Although sometimes when you're dealing with car dealerships, and I'm not saying anyone in particular, but I think they're all kind of like this, except the no dicker sticker places, sometimes you feel like you're almost being held there.
Yeah.
Because it's a back and forth kind of thing, and
Right.
and they keep trying to sweeten the pot a little bit, and
I really don't like buying cars. Absolutely.
No, and that's why I go to places. I bought my last car out of town. I told these people in town, look, I don't want to be negotiating. Here's the deal. Just give me your best price. And they thought that I was kidding around. And, I finally got fed up with let me go talk to my sales manager routine. And after like 2 or 3 times of that, I said, you know what? I'm tired of this. I told you I didn't want to deal with this. And so I left, and I found a place online down in Milwaukee that they have a no dicker sticker. That's what it is. There's no bargaining. And no negotiating. This is what it is. And you know what? Here's the funny thing about that, Susan. I went and I found a car, liked it, made the deal that very same night. The very next morning, I had just come back from the credit union picking up a cashier's check, and that dealership in town called me and said, I worked out another good deal for you. This is better yet. And I said, you're too late.
Yeah.
I said, I just got the check. I'm driving down to Milwaukee to get the new car. But when someone says, I'm not going to be negotiating here. Just give me your best price. Take them at their word. Don't sit here and play these games. You know, it's what a waste of everybody's time. You know, so I'm with you. I don't like buying cars either, but when I do, that's the route I'm going to go.
Yeah.
I thought of something here, and I made a little note about it when you were talking about cars. I think a lot of consumers think that they have 3 days. It's called a 3-day right to rescind.
Yes.
And I think that many consumers think that they have that 3-day right to rescind on anything, such as a car.
Yeah. No.
And that's not the case, is it?
No. So, you know, this is like a legal thing, and so probably it's a Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection, a good question for them. But, you know, basically the 3-day right to cancel or cooling off rule was created for people, you know, who, like the door-to-door salesman came to their house and you let them in because you wanted to be nice.
And then you can't get rid of them.
And then 4 hours later, they're still demonstrating their product, and they won't leave until you agree. I mean, the kids are crying and dinner's burning on the,
Yep.
and they won't leave. So you sign the form. That is the kind of transaction that the 3-day cooling off period is supposed to help. So anytime that the sale is made not in the business's location, permanent location, so maybe it's at your home, the 3-day cooling off period is enforceable. So there's a little bit of a difference there, but
Sure.
yeah.
And, you know, if someone's in doubt about that, they can always ask the merchant or the retailer that they're dealing with, you know, if they have a 3-day right to rescind or three days to cancel or whatever the terminology is. I think everybody uses a slightly different verbiage when it comes to that. Okay, so I think we've covered the bases as far as those complaint kind of things go. You know, you mentioned about mediation, I think, earlier on.
Right.
There are other types of services, right?
Yes. So, you know, the complaints, the business review, those are 2 services, you know, those are our main services that we provide for consumers. And we actually, we provide about 200,000 business reviews every month just in Wisconsin.
How many?
200,000.
That's what I thought you said. Wow, that is a lot.
Free business reviews on Wisconsin companies every month. And we file about 900 or 1,000 complaints every month here in Wisconsin as well. Those are all services that are free to the consumer. Now, there is another service that we provide, and it's mediation and arbitration. Okay. So if our normal complaint process isn't really sufficient, let's say you have an issue and you want to call in expert witnesses, and maybe you want to have you know, a neutral person or judge go out and inspect your roof or whatever it might be, then we'll offer an arbitration. There is a small fee, but it's a great alternative to small claims court because we're going to get 2 parties together. You don't necessarily have to have a lawyer, but you could if you wanted to. We'll hire an outside arbitrator. You'll get to choose your arbitrator. They have arbitrator training, but they'll also have some kind of experience in the industry. So if it's a roofing or remodeling issue, that arbitrator might have some kind of roofing experience. They will hear both sides of the case, and they might do an on-site visit. You'll have the opportunity to provide, you know, expert witnesses, things like that. And then they will, the arbitrator will decide, and it will be a binding decision. So it is a great alternative to small claims court. It generally is a little cheaper, a little faster.
Yeah, and you know, and I will say this, and you probably know this as well, Susan, is, you know, when I was working as a landlord, both for myself and for another outside company, you know, I'd have to file small claims actions kind of frequently for my employer. And the thing with small claims court is they want you to go through mediation anyway. I mean, they herd everyone into a big room, and they ask you if, you know, you have to have room to give and take, is what they always say. But they do try to get you to sit down with the other party and mediate it before scheduling it for a court date, because the courts are backlogged too.
Right.
So either way, you know, you've got an option to mediate something. So if someone has an issue that they do want to mediate or have an arbitrator for, what's the difference between the two, or is it kind of the same?
Mediation and arbitration?
Yeah.
Mediation really is just what the Better Business Bureau provides through our complaint process. Arbitration is just a step up because we're going to bring in an outside arbitrator,
And they're going to make a decision.
and it's going to be binding.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so if someone has a situation where they want one or the other, and it is one or the other, it's not both, it's just one or the other?
Well, if they are going through our normal complaint process and we're not coming to a mutually agreeable decision, and it appears that it's, you know, more complicated than our normal complaint process because they want to provide, you know, documents and witnesses, and they want to have testimony from other outside people, or they want us to come and inspect something. That's when arbitration is perfect because yeah.
So it can start out as a mediation and then bump up to an arbitrated type situation.
Right.
Okay. So if I have a situation like that I think is ripe for one of those two actions, what do I do when I call you guys?
Well, it probably would start out with a normal complaint process.
Okay.
So you'd file a complaint. It would go back and forth, and it's just not being resolved in our normal
Okay.
complaint process.
All right.
That's when the Better Business Bureau would recommend arbitration. Now, some people will say, no, I'm just going to go straight to small claims court, and that's totally fine and their prerogative. But, you know, you might give the arbitration process a try as well.
Sure. And again, going to small claims court, at least in Wisconsin, you're probably going to be sitting in a mediation type situation anyway. Although you don't have to.
Right.
You know, you never have to. God, I'm learning some things about you guys here tonight.
Great.
Other things like lemon law,
Yes.
Shred Fest. Tell me about
Okay,
those. Well, I
so,
know about lemon law, but
The
let's.
Better Business Bureau is actually the arbitrator for, the administrator for Wisconsin's lemon law. So,
Really?
Yes. So if you have a new car that you think is a lemon, and there's a definition of that, I think you have to have 4 tries at the same defect to give the manufacturer 4 tries, I think in 1 year, to repair the same defect, and they still don't do it, then your car might be a lemon. And so you will contact the Better Business Bureau. We will arbitrate a case between you and the manufacturer. So
Okay. So, and that's the key though, isn't it, Susan, is that with the lemon law, it has to be the same defect. I mean, it can't be where I say, they did a lousy brake job, or this car has lousy brakes. I buy a new car. This car has lousy brakes. And, it's got a lousy engine.
Yeah.
I'm back to the engine thing again. You'd think I had an engine problem, and I haven't, knock on wood.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a problem with the tires. They just feel all out of, it can't be all these different things.
Yeah.
It has to be the same,
Well, now,
right? Or
lemon laws, they may be different in different
states.
But there's definitely definitions of, you know, is your car a lemon? You should Google that, because there's the defect, it has to be the same defect, or it has to be unserviceable for 30, you know, an aggregate of 30 days. So, I mean, there's a complicated
Sure.
definition of what and it has to be like, it has to impair the, you know, the service or the quality or the value of your car. So it's a pretty complicated definition of what a lemon is. But
yeah, and in some states, depending on where you happen to be viewing this, I know like when I lived in Colorado, we had to pass an air emissions test. You know, the cars there had, and you had to have a sticker for it. But when I lived in Texas, it was a safety inspection. So I think there's something with lemon laws if your car doesn't pass X number of times or something like that. But that's if you've bought the car, not where you've just had the car for a while and you haven't maintained it.
yeah.
So the inspection process kind of plays a role in that as well. And then what's this Shred
Shred Fest.
Shred Fest?
Yes, I'm glad you asked. So the Better Business Bureau of Wisconsin actually has a foundation. It's a nonprofit educational foundation. And one of the things that we do that is really great is that we provide twice a year a free community shredding event for consumers. It's part of our outreach to help educate people about the dangers of identity theft, because most people don't know, but most identity theft cases don't occur online. They occur when somebody steals something with your personal information on it. Either they're stealing mail out of your mailbox, or they're dumpster diving, or they've stolen your wallet, your purse, whatever. So we really have quite the outreach effort for people to, if you don't need it, shred it responsibly. Don't throw it in your trash or anything like that. And so twice annually, we have these events called Shred Fest. Last time, it was at the end of May, we collected about 15,000 pounds of material with our partners, which was ARMS Incorporated, a professional document destruction company, and SVA, Certified Public Accountants. We had everybody come into the SVA parking lot in 2.5 hours. About 550 cars went through, collected about 15,000 pounds of material. Not only is that, a lot of identities that we're helping protect, but we're keeping 15,000 pounds of material out of a landfill, because all of that information, all of those documents are shredded and then recycled. So it's a great event, part of our shredding event, and an arm of our educational foundation. So we love that event.
And how often, I know you said the last one was the end of May, are you talking about just like last month? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's generally something that we do twice annually, in the spring and the fall.
Okay.
And we generally do it in all 3 of our locations. So either on the same day or in close proximity to each other, we'll have an event in Madison, Appleton, and Milwaukee.
Okay.
So it's great. It's actually, it's a bigger event. It's not just the Wisconsin Better Business Bureau, but other BBB offices throughout the country hold similar type events.
Okay.
So it's great.
All right.
So if you want to know when the next Shred Fest event will be, we encourage you to come and bring your documents. You can always call us or go online, bbb.org/Wisconsin/ShredFest, or give us a call and we can tell you all the details on when our next event will be.
Okay. And again, that phone number is 920-734-4352.
Yep.
And I'll try and repeat that again before we wrap things up here. So some of the, I know you guys issue BBB alerts, and I don't know how often you issue them, if it's X number per week or X number per month, or just on an as-needed basis. But tell us about what the alerts are, and maybe some of the more recent ones that you've had come across your desk.
Sure. Well, I think I mentioned earlier that we have an investigator. So she's constantly working on, she's running reports, is there a company that's getting a lot of complaints, or are there patterns of complaints, or is there a company out there that's getting just a ton of inquiries? Why is that? Maybe it's an infomercial or a mailing that they sent. We have an 800 number too for the rest of Wisconsin, 800-273-1002. And a lot of people give us a call and they say, I've got this weird message on my answering machine, or there's someone knocking at my door, or I got this kind of suspicious mailer, and they'll give us a call. So oftentimes we're the first people to really hear about things that are not quite right that are happening in our state. So that's the job of our investigator, to kind of pull that information together, and whether it's alerting the local law enforcement, whether it's alerting the public, whether it's alerting our businesses, because sometimes scams affect businesses. That's her job, to really push those alerts out there. Now, you can go to our website and sign up for these scam alerts.
Okay.
Or you can, just kind of favorite our Facebook page or our Twitter page, because we really use those as news feeds as well.
Okay, excellent. And so they do come out then just sort of as
needed.
As needed.
But I will tell you, she's a very busy person.
I bet. What are some of the more recent ones that she has seen, or that you have seen?
There was one, an online retailer that was selling engine transmissions and engine parts that really even though they were located in Wisconsin, we had hundreds of complaints from people all over the country. So she did an alert about that. But things that you might find on our local page are, sharing information from maybe local law enforcement agencies too. I know that there was recently an alert from the Appleton Police Department about a scam that was actually happening last week, the beginning of June, where somebody was going around door to door and taping a little note with an envelope on people's front doors saying, notice the homeowner is responsible for painting house numbers on curbs. Yeah.
Come on.
We'll be in your neighborhood tomorrow or, the next day. The cost is $15. Please put $15 in this envelope, tape it to your front door, and we'll be around to, paint your curb and collect the money. So the Appleton Police Department, and they shared with us and other people that that's a scam, that is not required by the city of Appleton, that the Appleton Police Department doesn't operate that way or use that or require that from you. So be aware that that's not coming from us. It's not an official notice. But that's the thing about some of these scams is that they make it look like it's an official, or they try and word it so that it sounds like it's required. If you get something like that, it really is a good idea to give the Better Business Bureau a call and see what is this? There was some home and sewer type lines too as well, where some very official looking notices were sent out to homeowners that said the homeowner is responsible if there's a water or sewer line break between the main and your house. So we recommend that you buy this insurance, which that was a private company, but it looked very official. It looked like it was coming from your local municipality.
I got one of those in the mail.
Yeah.
Actually, where you can buy this insurance.
Right.
And I mean, it was tempting, only from the standpoint that years ago I did have a water line break in between the city's main line and my house.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, to dig up the lawn, part of the sidewalk, half the street, and I was out of the house. I was put out of the house for like 5 days because the water had to be off and all this kind of stuff as they were fixing this. I mean, it was like close to $6,000 with hotel room and meals and all that.
Wow.
Fortunately, my insurance covered it because it was a sewer collapse. But I mean, if it hadn't been a sewer collapse and just a break, then that would have been on me.
Right.
And so I looked at this thing very, very carefully, and then something just said, no, pass.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess the problem that we had was that it was worded as though it was required and that it was coming from your local municipality. And we had a problem with that. So our alert was really to tell people, look, this is not coming from your local municipality. It's not required. And here are some really good questions to ask. Like, call your local municipality and see, how often does this happen? Am I really at risk? And then kind of weigh that like any other insurance that you might buy. Is it really, am I at a big risk for this happening or not so much? So, or am I covered already by my local homeowner's insurance? So stuff like that is the kind of things that we would definitely want to alert the public about.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about scams earlier as far as charities.
Yeah.
And there was one that you had mentioned to me.
There was a big one just recently by the Federal Trade Commission. They named 4 cancer charities that really, I guess, had bilked $187 million out of donors.
Wow.
And the names of those charities are the Cancer Fund of America, the Children's Cancer Fund of America, Cancer Support Services, and the Breast Cancer Society. And what the FTC, they closed them down, and they said that $187 million in donations that they had collected, really very little, if any, went to the actual mission. And they discovered that, the principals of those companies were using it to pay for vacations and college tuitions for their families and cars and things like that. So I guess it really illustrates the point about how you as a donor you want to give with your heart, but you want to use your head as well, because there are so many unscrupulous charities out there that are really they're going to use words like cancer or children to really pull at your heartstrings. And so it's up to you as the donor to do your research before you do that, so that your hard-earned dollars aren't going into the hands of the wrong people.
Yeah. There was another website situation where they were selling bulldog puppies.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
That was another recent alert from the Better Business Bureau. And this happens a lot, but we see, there will be a legitimate website of, a legitimate company, whether it's, selling puppies or what have you, but then there will be like a look-alike website that they may steal all the pictures and the verbiage and make it look exactly like the real website, but it's a fake website. So you have to be careful that you're really on the website that you think that you are on. But having said that, buying a pet online is really a risky business.
It's very risky.
Yeah.
And if I could just interject, because I'm all about animal welfare, and I work and have worked for years with animal welfare groups. You should not, even if you're trying to get rid of a pet that for whatever reason you don't want, please do not, you should not put ads out for free to a good home. You should not try to give them away on Craigslist. Those are big no-nos. People will grab those pets and use them for horrible things, whether it's training of dog fights, or so they'd be used as bait in dog fights, or they would be sold to laboratories where horrible things happen to them in the experimental phases. Just, if you need to get rid of a pet, surrender it to a local animal shelter or a rescue group. There are breed-specific rescue groups out there, and then there are also mixed breed rescue groups. Don't buy pets in pet stores or from online things, even if you think it looks legitimate, because then you're helping to promote puppy mills in most cases. So just surrender a pet or get a pet from a responsible, legitimate rescue group or Humane Society, local animal shelter kind of thing.
Yeah, and in this particular case, it had scam red flags all over it. Not only were they stealing the identity of a legitimate business, but they would ask you, they were selling a very expensive breed of dog for a too good to be true price. So that got people's attention right away. And then they would ask you to wire money for this animal.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so, sight unseen, they're asking you to wire money to this animal. And then there was always a reason why they needed more money. The animal, there was a problem in the transportation, or they needed more shots or doctor bills or something like that. I don't think that there was ever an animal that was going to be coming to them. So that's another reason why, if you're shopping online for a pet, in addition to all the other reasons that you just said, you have to be very careful about people pretending to be a legitimate business when they're not.
Sure, and we've got one more alert that just came out, and we've only got about 45 seconds to talk about this one. The student loan forgiveness scam.
Yeah, there was just a recent case by the Illinois Attorney General bringing charges against some companies who were promising total loan forgiveness, student loan forgiveness.
Wow.
Now, doesn't that sound wonderful?
Sounds great.
Total student loan forgiveness. Well, what was happening was really that they were charging large upfront fees for a service that they could do themselves, or information that they could get for free elsewhere. So if you are a student and you have a great amount of debt, don't be fooled by those traps of total student loan forgiveness. Although there is programs that you can get student loan forgiveness, they're very hard. There's a lot of conditions that have to be met. You have to have a history of making on-time payments. So don't be fooled by those social media posts that there's a new government program that will help you with student loan, because there is no such thing. So
Okay, all right, very good. Thanks so much.
That
It's
was an
always-
hour already?
That was
Wow.
already, but we're going to have you back before the
Okay.
end of the year.
All
So
right. Well,
thank you so much. And thanks to the crew, and most of all, thanks to you. We'll see you next time. Until then, keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.